As CFO in a FinTech, you are at the forefront of pushing the company forward, whether that's getting the financials in the right order or bringing on new investors or managing the investors, working with the board. You have to be, as an effective CFO, someone who can have that entrepreneurial spirit by growing the business.
How would you describe the role of a CFO in a business like Form3?
So you are the right-hand man or woman to the CEO. So that relationship with the CEO is absolutely so important to how effective you are as a CFO. I think if you have a CFO who's too risk averse, then you're going to miss a lot of opportunities. You need somebody who is talking to people in the market, talking to either investors, investment bankers, to try and find the right opportunities to move the business forward.
How much have you had to develop the storytelling piece of your sort of soft skills?
Significantly. In 3 years, we grew and kept our valuation. That's amazing. And then what? Right? What's next for us? We now are looking at continuing to invest in the US, continuing to grow, and we need that momentum to continue with us. Because I can explain to an investor how I don't spend their money faster. That's what will help me. But they're not going to invest in a company that's not scaling and growing and valuation rising. I'm just telling them that our burn rate is slower. It's not enough. The challenge is always about profitability, and that profitability challenge can't be met by just shrinking. It's not enough.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the time out.
Thank you.
On a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
As a starting point, could you just tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to CFO as well, please?
Yeah, so Benyam Hagos, I'm CFO at Form3 and chairman of the board of Trust UK Payments. I've been in London my whole life, really. Started at PwC in 2008, so did 12 years in PwC in London and New York. And then spent 3 years at MasterCard in their controller group, UK and Ireland, Nordics and Baltics. And then Niam, cross-border payments company, headquartered in Singapore and San Francisco. And then the last 18 months at Form3 in London.
Super. And what was it that sort of drew you into the fintechs and payments space?
I think having been in audit for such a long time, I wanted to be more entrepreneurial. And what you felt was going into a big corporate like MasterCard, you learn what good looks like, how to develop, how the company should be established. But I wanted to start to build something myself. As CFO in a fintech, you are at the forefront of pushing the company forward, whether that's getting the financials in the right order or bringing on new investors or managing the investors, working with the board. You have to be, as an effective CFO, someone who can have that entrepreneurial spirit by growing the business, because no one shrinks to success. You've got to be the ones who are pushing the business forward. And that excited me at that point in my career.
Yeah, super. And where did the sort of the drive and the motivation come? Because obviously it's relatively high profile, it's high stress. Where was the sort of fire in you to get to that position?
I think it's come from a young age. My dad was in finance for a long time. He was a finance director, more in the university space than I was. Well, I saw him leaving every day in a suit and jacket and going into London, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. Right. So as from a young age, for me, that was how he provided and what we had as a family. So when I thought about what I wanted to do, those were natural footsteps for me to follow. I wanted to be at PwC, something he could never really do, as hopefully he hears this and is jealous. But I wanted to be at PwC and I wanted to push forward from there and kind of keep the legacy going. He was a finance person. He still is a finance person. I'm just a more effective one, I guess.
Super. And how would you describe the role of a CFO in a business like Form3?
I think it's evolving. So you are the right-hand man or woman to the CEO. So that relationship with the CEO is absolutely so important to how effective you are as a CFO. You are looking for the right CEO who can push you to do things differently, who listens to things that you talk about, whether it's the risks of the business or the risk we should take going forward, and having that challenge to you and both of you working together. So my CEO at Form3 is one of the co-founders. He was a CPO and became CEO a month before I joined. That was exciting for me because I knew that he would want to change and he'd want to push the business forward as he started his reign as CEO, being a 7-8 year old business. that was exciting. So I wanted a CEO who I could grow with and develop with. And now, 16, 17 months in, we have a rhythm of how we want to run board meetings, how we want to engage with new investors, existing investors, and what good looks like for us as a business. So we are now more of a double act. As CFO, my role is to support him and make the company successful.
How important that chemistry, I guess, when we speak to CFO, fundamental to success. How did you, in the sort of interview process and going through the process, know that it was the right one?
I think as you are coming into your first, my second really, but CFO role, the conversation is different. No one's going to ask you about IFRS 9. No one's going to ask you about technical knowledge, especially if you've been a Big Four.
Mm-hmm.
So it's around what the vision is for the business. So when you are interviewing with a company like I was, there's enough research you can do around knowing the business. So
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to some investment banks who had not led rounds, but in discussions with them in rounds. I spoke to some of the employees that I knew through my network. That helped me get a clear view of what the business would be. And then when I went into interviews, I wanted a conversation. So I didn't want to be going through lists of questions. I wanted somebody who we could have a debate back and forth over how the business could move forward. I spent 2.5 years in New York, and I wanted somebody who saw that as a positive to the business. So saw that the fact that I knew the US, I knew a lot of people in there, I knew the market, I knew the US GAAP, I knew how an IPO could potentially work. Somebody would see the value in that. That was why I wanted to do that at an early age at PwC rather than just stay here and continue the audit, RAN and BNCM. That was what I was looking for.
Brilliant. And any advice that you've had along the way that stands out to you so far on that sort of, again, the route to the CFO role?
I think it was at the end of my time at PwC, I worked with a partner who was on secondment from the US, and his ethos, probably the best way to describe it, was about being honest, being open, being transparent, and just being you, and realizing that you can't walk too far from that. People will see through it. So you need to be honest and transparent, and you have to try and be human, because nobody really works for the company. You work for your boss, you work for the people around you, and trying to find somebody so he had 3 young kids, his wife had a bit of a different climate at certain points, but having somebody I looked up to who was trying to have a successful career, had a great family life, and still wanted to push on, was somebody that had a huge impact on my career. He's now leader of the US firm. We knew that at that point that he was somebody who was going to go much further, but having spent a lot of time with somebody in close quarters who had a lifestyle that I wanted at that time really pushed me towards being a CFO. Even though I didn't become partner, it was the way he managed his lifestyle towards being an effective professional in the financial sphere.
Yeah, super.
And how has your sort of management and leadership style evolved, coming from Big Four to big multinational to now end-to-end in sort of mid-scale companies?
I think time is of the essence in FinTech. Burn is high, challenge from investors is even higher, and you have to be effective. So we don't have the time and the luxury to take time over every decision. Every month is important. Every close is important. Every deal is important. And if you're in a FinTech environment, you have to show you're effective, because we don't have the time to wait. Right? If you're in a corporate environment, I was at MasterCard, it's a huge business. By definition, things will take longer because they want more control around the changes that such a big organization makes. That's fine, but that means that you have to spend much more time in your preparation of activities and things that you do. Whereas in a FinTech environment, you have to be dynamic, you have to be agile, and you have to continue to move. And if you have a CFO who's too risk averse, then you're going to miss a lot of opportunities. You need somebody who is talking to people in the market, talking to either investors, investment bankers, whoever, to try and find the right opportunities to move the business forward. They won't all work. A lot of them won't work. But if the company feels that you're at the forefront of evolving change in the business, then that's when you have the most effective CFO.
Super. How do you, how do you balance that tension of being, in a highly regulated space with agility, pace, and innovation?
I think it's around the team that you have beneath you. So making sure you have the right control framework. So obviously, having been in the Big Four, I'll always value that experience, that controls and process experience. My wife's in internal audit. Like, we will always value that kind of basis of knowledge. So the first few things I've done in each of my roles is not to go out and fundraise. I mean, I did in this role, but it's to actually fix the BAU. Let's focus on BAU. Let's get reporting done. Once we do that and invest in the right people in those functions, then we can start to move forward. But I think you lose credibility in front of an audit committee or a risk committee if you don't have those controls and processes in place. And so the starting point for me is getting the right team with the right experience beneath you who can drive those processes. And that's something that we've got now in Form3, and I did the same thing in here.
So your dinner time discussions are quite something.
Riveting. Riveting.
Brilliant. And then in terms of spending your time partnering with product and technology teams, which I guess brings some challenges as well, different mindsets, different ways of working. How are you effective when working with leaders of those functions?
I think you have to be really humble about your own knowledge. I'm not the best product person, and I will know that, and I'll get teased for it, and I'll get laughed at. That's not my role. My role is to support them in being dynamic and open in the industry. I did an interview recently about AI and being a tech pioneer. It's because that excites me. I see the impact of that in the financial markets, in the companies that are growing. So I want to encourage my product and sales teams to have that same innovative feature. Look at trying to write innovation funnels, trying to do different things that are exciting. That's what I want from my products team and my revenue team. In this role, and even more so in my last role at Neum, spent a lot of time with sales teams doing pitches, being involved in that side of it, because I think as a CFO, I also want to drive revenue. And I think in my last role, where I was CFO and COO, I enjoyed both of it because I reported numbers. The numbers were bad. I then, as COO, said, why are they bad? What should we be doing differently to develop them? That's the same idea that I have in Form3, and something that I think separates me from a lot of CFOs. I'm super commercial. I've done my stripes in building controls. I don't really need to do that anymore. It's a given. I want to be scaling and growing a business, whether that's new markets, new products, new revenue streams. And I want to give the CS team and product team that challenge of, why aren't we doing more? I can get you more money. Give me an idea. And I always say the same thing. If we're going to go out and do pitching and I've got to do a proceeds document, tell me what you would do if I gave you 10 million to spend on AI. You're not going to do it now, but if I got you 10 million, what would you do? The answer can't be nothing. You have to have an idea. Tell me an idea. And that's enough for me to get people excited about us as a business. And then we go from there. And so I'm probably annoying to them in trying to bring new ideas and make us, a successful business.
Super. From an investor perspective and investor relations perspective, what are some of the difficult questions that you've had to field in the boardroom?
I think the difficult one will always be forecasting forever. Right? So the difficult challenge you'll always have is, why have you missed forecasts? Why is it higher or lower? Where are you from a cost perspective? And trying to have the right optimism in your forecast, because if you have a boardroom that's with VCs and PE firms, nobody wants to see stable 10, 15% growth. They want to see you challenging yourself to be, 30, 40, rule of 40. That's what they want to see. But if you miss that rule of 40, then you're going to have a really challenging conversation. So it's that balance of having the optimism in your numbers to say how we're going to drive the business forward, but also understanding the risk element of it and having enough in a burn and cash and runway perspective to hedge that risk. So explaining, this is my optimistic forecast, is on the top end of this range, but my base level is here because this is where the risk is, and the risk on that is X, Y, and therefore that impacts runway this way. So just having that balanced view of what the future could look like, because they want to see return not only on their money, but they want to see that we're growing the business. Nobody wants to see a business that's at 10, 15%. it's not going to be enough to get VCs and especially big PE firms excited about any kind of business in this market, especially with valuations where they are.
Yeah. And how much have you had to develop the storytelling piece of your sort of soft skills and skill set in recent years as part of that?
Significantly. I've watched a lot of people in my career do this very, very well.
Yeah.
One of the old partners I knew used to have business cards. So whenever we met somebody, he would write on the back of it, obviously it was business cards then, all the key points for what they remembered in that meeting, and then file it and have it in documents. The team now are pushing me to do voice notes. So what I do after every investor meeting now is I do a voice note back to the team on who I met, what we discussed, and I'll ask, what are the key follow-ups that I want to talk about. And so through the effective use of that tool, when I'm now meeting back into those groups, I get the output from my last meeting. So the team will feed me and say, look, the last time you met, you talked about these things. Make sure you ask about this. This is the areas that they're focused on. So focus the conversation in that way. So it's something I'm developing, something I'm trying to do better, but I'm spending a lot more time in the prep of that. I was at FinTech meetup in Vegas a couple of weeks ago. That's 1,000 tables, right? Just 1,000 tables, 15-minute meetings. So how are you polishing your prep? How are you being able to position that to new investors to get them excited about a UK business that's expanding in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How valuable was that trip?
It was very valuable. It was hard, right? It was hard. And I say it's hard even though I had a nice suite in Vegas and it was a nice trip, right? But it was hard because we are transforming our business. We're moving forward, which is what we need to do. But we need to continue to grow. We need to scale. We go back to the same point. We can't shrink to success. We have to grow as a business. And so meeting people who can help us to go to market, help us looking at, something inorganic, if that's interesting. Those are conversations I want to be part of because that's what gets me excited and then gets the board excited. You have to temper that to what you can actually achieve. But I think the company needs to see that I'm out there having those conversations, and I need to see the revenue and the CS team doing something similar. Otherwise, what are we doing to move the business forward? Right. So I need to feel like when I'm in the management table, I look across at the CRO. I mean, we have a relatively new CRO and a CCO before that. They're doing the same thing. Like, I'm one of the key salespeople in the company, and I don't sell. So I need to work with the CRO and the CCO and others to position our company as best as I can going forward. Because they may think that they're very important salespeople, but I think I'm quite important too.
Yeah.
And over the next 18 months then, to follow on from that, what are your top 3 kind of key objectives externally, and how do they compare to your top 3 objectives internally?
They're very different. I think the external view for us is new market, new product. We've had some changes in the team structure, which is helping. So we've brought in a CRO who is driving a different type of go-to-market strategy, which for us is new and different and hard and expensive, right? It's part of it, right? That is part, but that's why I'm more excited than anyone to have him there, because I want somebody who's going to do something different to what we had before, which is why the external go-to-market strategy is really key for us. But internally, we have moved significantly in terms of our volumes of transactions that we process. We have big clients that we've moved on board. Internally, it's about efficiency. It's trying to run our ship efficiently to allow me then to go out and have conversations with a burn rate that we can tolerate and the market can tolerate. So that's why you've got a difference between internally around efficiency, externally it's around investment and growth. And the way I explain our management team now is we've got a lot of us who are people who spent significant time in the US, which is our biggest market, and then we'll go to the US and go out and pitch. I've already been out there twice, talking today about going out there again in April. I will be there in June. The aim is we are people who realize this is the biggest market for us and want to push that forward. So that's where we'll spend the majority of our time.
Super. Obviously, the fundraising environment's still tricky. I think better than it was slightly in previous years. But what have you learned having gone through a number of rounds now and successfully raised?
The biggest thing I think I've learned is that you can't believe it until it's signed, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think you can get very excited, and we've talked to a number of different people, but until you see it really signed, you can never really believe that it's done. So you have ones where you go through due diligence, you get through term sheet, but it never really gets to signing signatures and cash in the bank. And that's really the end of it. We did a fundraise last year where we did an extension to our Series C, and we kept our valuation. That's hugely important for us as a business, and something I'm so proud of that we were able to do. That was really hard. And showing that out in the market meant we got a lot of interest from other investors over how we did that, how we developed, because we grew in as a business in that time. In 3 years, we grew and kept our valuation. That's amazing. And then what? Right? What's next for us? We now are looking at continuing to invest in the US, continuing to grow, and we need that momentum to continue with us. So in the funding element we are now, the challenge is always about profitability. And that profitability challenge can't be met by just shrinking. It's not enough. Because I can explain to an investor how I don't spend their money faster. That's what will help me. But they're not going to invest in a company that's not scaling and growing and valuation rising. I'm just telling them that our burn rate is slower. It's not enough. So they need to see that we are winning clients, winning products, moving markets, seeing us in the press. They need that. That's what's exciting, and that's what we're doing as a business. But it's a challenge. It's not easy.
Yeah. You have taken on a non-executive director role alongside your day job as well.
Yes.
At a relatively young age,
Thanks.
compared to most. Tell us a bit about that and why that's important to you and how it came about.
So it was something I talked about probably 2 years ago. That's something I wanted to start doing. When I was, I think, probably at PwC, I obviously then attended a lot of audit committees, a lot of board meetings, and saw the non-exec dynamic, right? So I saw the idea that people would fly in for a day, do a non-exec role for a couple of days, and that's what they were doing. It's more than that, obviously, but that was what their role was, and they were in their 50s, and that's what they did. And then as I went through my time at NEOM, we had a lot more regulatory non-exec directors. So as we then went to Netherlands, we had to hire a non-exec in Netherlands to manage the regulator. As we had our Malta license, of course, we had to have the same thing. So then, and as I was director of those entities, I started to work quite closely with a non-exec as a CFO of those businesses to make sure they were kept up to date, they managed the board meeting, and those things worked. And then I started to think that's a really nice way to end your career. And looking at our CCOs doing something similar, I think it's a great way to have a different kind of perspective. So when I took on the non-exec role, I wanted really two things. The first was to improve how effective I could be around the board table. So I'm presenting a lot at the board. I'm building the documents. I'm working with the CEO. So I wanted to see how it would be to sit on the other side and know the frustration about late documents, know the frustration about not being able to tie numbers and not being that close to it, and how you would manage the boardroom effectively. So I wanted that side of it for my own development. And then what I wanted alongside it, the second bit was that could be the end of my career. So if I can do director roles in the UK, and I've done it in a number of European markets now, that can be the portfolio that I have at the end of my career. I don't want to work until, I'm 60, 65. I don't want to do that. What I could do is have a non-exec portfolio alongside it. It was very hard to get it. It's very rare that I got it. There's not many people around me that I see who have done that, especially at my age. And I think it kind of shows where my career is moving.
Yeah.
What have you learned from sitting on the other side of the table then?
Well, it's been a month, right? So I started at the beginning of March. I've had 2 board meetings. I'm chair now. It's very different. So I've, especially if you grew up in a Big Four environment, you're used to almost putting your hand up quickly and answering questions constantly. You want to be the life of the room, and if you've got a partner meeting, there's so many people, everybody wants to speak, and you want to give your best in a meeting. The board's not like that as a non-exec. You've got to ask pointed questions and then wait and let them respond and wait for your time. It's not for you to drive the room. It's for you to give insight that the executives haven't seen. And working with CFO and CEO also is interesting. So I met CEO for breakfast and having a dynamic with them where I don't report to him. I'm on the board. So we're working to develop each other. It's a very different way of working. And I I enjoyed that challenge. I think I'm developing it with it. So yeah.
Is there sort of a dialogue going on in your head sort of during this to kind of context shift a bit and shift that angle consciously from your day job to
Yeah, I think so.
this?
I think so. I don't think it's something that I will do in the short term. I think it's a long
Yeah.
way away from me. But I think having those relationships alongside a CFO of a fintech role is a great mix. As long as you can manage it, and that's not easy, as long as you can manage it. I've done certain things. I've talked to a few people about how they manage it who've done it before, trying to have carved off time, having different, just having a different device, a simple thing. Like I have a different iPad that has just that company on it. Has nothing else on it. Just that. So if I need it to do anything, I'm going to look at that and I can't get distracted. It doesn't have any of my other work stuff on it. It's just that. And just trying to be organized and be effective. Some of the exec coach training I did at NEOM and at PwC through MasterCard have really shown me that I need to be more effective, and just being conscious that when you open something, you do it once, and just trying to be effective in the moment and not have long running to-do lists that you never get through is just a different way of working. And especially with my chaotic home life, it's something I focus on.
Interested to know your tactics then around, so not long, never-ending to-do lists. What's the remedy for that?
So I don't write anything down.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the way I do it is, the way I think of it is, if something comes into me that takes 2 minutes, so it's called GHDD, I think it's what it's called. There's a book on it.
Yep.
And the idea is that everything that comes in, if it takes 2 minutes, you should process it in those 2 minutes.
Yep.
So if someone asks me, can you email the CEO? Like, okay. And you don't write down, because it takes longer for you to write it down, come back to it and redo it. So what I try to do is focus on getting the small things done quickly as they come in. Yeah. And then carving out big chunks of time to do larger tasks, prepare board meetings and things like that. One of the, I guess, things you learn at Big Four is about project management. That's one of my strengths, is that I will look ahead to a board meeting in a month and I'll sit with the CEO and say, what do you want included in it? How do you want the structure to work? We'll agree that up front. We'll change 10 times, doesn't really matter, but we will agree timings and structure to get ready for the board meeting. And that's something I learned at Big Four, and something that I do for all of my big things. So I never really have to go outside of that for large areas of work, because I'm focused on relationships. I have an amazing EA who knows what's going on in my personal life, knows when I want to be with the kids, and knows when she needs to get hold of me. So having somebody who I trust inherently and has access to everything hugely helps my life.
Tell us a bit about, because for the most part, you're fully remote. Is that right?
Yes.
And obviously leading the team remote board meetings, or that?
Mostly remote. Yeah.
How are you? Because it's a different type of style of leadership, I guess, in some respects. Remotely, maybe we can debate that, but interested to get your take on how you've been effective in that sort of remote leadership capacity.
I think one benefit of our company is we've always been remote. So it wasn't something that changed in COVID. Always been remote, because there was a majority of R&D function of engineers who wanted to be remote, which meant we hired over a number of different locations. That was the setup, which has then meant when I've hired people, I've had to say we are remote. So I've had finance people reject jobs because it's remote, because they've never understood how it is to be a finance person and be remote. They just don't understand how they're going to learn, develop, see me, be in meetings. They just didn't know. So what I've done now is I've structured my time since I've been in this company that I'll always do a day a week in the office. And that day a week, I'd always meet the CEO face to face, which was then a more efficient way of me doing it. And by holding time on my calendar each week in the office, different teams or my sub teams could come in each month. So what I said to them was, each month, each team would have a 2-hour meeting with me. And I had 3 teams, which meant 3 weeks out of 4, we would meet. And that's what I would do face to face. In that meeting, we'd go through objectives, timings, and things like that. And I'll also have one-to-ones with the leaders of that sub-team during that day. It would all be face to face. On that day, I wouldn't do any other work. Whereas I take my laptop, I wouldn't open it. It would be full on face to face, do whatever else I can. And I would use that as a springboard to the rest of the week. or the rest of the month, depending on who I was meeting, on things I wanted to work through. So it was a different dynamic. So I found it easier doing that, actually. Our team is still all across the UK. People do still travel in for it. But if you ask somebody who's remote, can you come in once a month for a 2-hour meeting with the CFO? They generally can do it because I know when it is and I don't move it. So like, can we just try and be fair to people that they know it comes for a day, and some of them would come down from Manchester and spend 2 days. Fine. You don't have to do that. But it meant that they knew they had a day when they came in. That was the day they could go and get me. They knew when I was around and try and manage it in that way. But remotely, what I do is I'm flexible, right? I do pick ups and drop offs and things like that. I'm always on my phone, right? So I'm always on my phone, and they know they can get hold of me, and they know that if they need me, they can find me.
Yeah. Super. Are there any other sort of habits that you've got that enable you to lead clearly and effectively?
I think one thing I learned a while ago was to try not to let people call me. It's a bit weird. So what I mean is that I try to be on the forefront of all communication with the people around me. So it's very rare that my boss will call me, because I don't really let him call me, because I will call him before he calls me on that to give an update on certain things. Which then mean that in an environment where you want flexible working, I know when he's around, I know when I'm around, and we can manage our way through it. So similarly with the team, I'm open with times when I'm more available or less available, which means that they do know when they can get hold of me, which means that they can structure their time also in the same way. So we have open conversations with head of treasury here. I know he spends Tuesday afternoon with his kids. Fine. So it's just trying to manage each of their times and being open with them of when they're around and when I'm around.
Right. And on that piece as well, balance. Three kids, fairly chaotic. Big job, non-exec job. How have you managed to find some sort of balance in between all of that, and how do you manage, stress, etc.?
It's very hard. It's very hard. I have a very understanding wife, because I'm also traveling as well. So I have a very understanding wife who was in PwC with me, so understands what the challenge of being at PwC, has a big job in an investment bank, so knows the challenge of being in a big job. And so when we discuss what we're both doing together, we know that there has to be some give and take, but we understand that sometimes it takes longer or shorter than you expect. It's never that easy. So we're constantly talking, constantly working through it. I think I don't think I've nailed it. I think my brother's probably better at it, my older brother. I'm trying to do a few things differently. So now I'm trying to get up earlier. So my current strategy is, and I was telling someone last week, I'm trying to do a 5 a.m. Right, get up at 5 a.m., have a coffee in peace, and then start. I think I've told that to about 20 people. I've so far done it 4 times.
Okay.
Right, but it's the
You're trying
idea.
to put the social weight on you for telling
I'm trying
them.
to say, because it also makes me do it, right? So now I'm thinking, okay, try and do that, because if I do that, then I'm more effective than if I worked until late at night and then late in the morning and then rushing with the kids out the door. So how can I be more effective in that way? We are, as a family, have a lot of things going on, so we try to spend Sundays generally not seeing anyone. So try and have Sundays as a much slower day for all of us. So we can my daughter can do homework, the boys can do homework. We could just do things slower if we can on Sunday. It doesn't work every week, but really try to not do a lot on a Sunday. We're trying to, and if we do that, then there's more chance that we can be better as a group. So we have a close family. I think a lot of people are, but we are a very small family. Obviously, our boys were born in COVID, so at that time your world closes a little bit, and so they're used to us all being together and actually moving kind of as a pack, as a very small family. We're part of a much bigger family. I have 3 brothers. My wife has a number of cousins. We're at a much bigger family, but we really value that time where we can just slow down.
Yeah, and
that's something I'm trying to get better at. But the team will tell you that I'm super intense and I run at 100 miles an hour and I'm doing too many things.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And your 5 a.m. club's not going to get easier on Sunday either, is it?
No.
With the clock's changing. I think it's probably go out a bit later, but super. Anything else important? I mean, we have some aspiring CFOs potentially listening to this, any other advice or tips that you would offer them in terms of that journey towards becoming a CFO?
I think I'm a natural introvert. That's my natural style. I found that isn't always helpful in a company where you're trying to grow and scale, or in a company where you want a big four when you are trying to share your accomplishments and grow. And so I've had to adapt my own style towards sharing all of the good things that we're doing, especially in a finance function where it can kind of be hidden in the corner. So it's easier if you're in a commercial organization to say, sign this customer, watch these things. If you fix an accruals process, not everybody will see that. So you have to be more extrovert in pulling out the things that you've done and the value of that into the business. So I think I would really do that. Someone in my team is very good at her LinkedIn and but not just LinkedIn, the way she manages her external network. So she writes articles, she does things, and she goes out of her way to improve her presence as somebody who's known in the market for a specialty. And that's super impressive. She's not the most senior individual. She's not CFO, but she sees value in doing that. So does teachings back at her university, does interviews in magazines, does write articles about her topic of choice. Not everyone does that.
No.
And I am somebody who is trying to do more than my role because I think it makes me more effective.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be out there more than I naturally would because I think it makes me better.
Yeah.
By doing this by doing interviews with JP Morgan, they're not things that are natural to me, but I only think that's the way I think about doing it is if I screw up, I screw up. You just will cut me out anyway. It doesn't really matter.
Got to get outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. You've got to try.
Yeah, that's where the growth comes from, right?
Yeah.
And the so the personal branding bit for many of your peer group is quite an icky phrase, I would say. Is it important?
I think it is important. I think it gets more important as you progress through your career. So I think in a junior end, you could argue it's not as important. But if you're looking for figureheads in the market, there's always going to be this. If you're not one of those names, you're going to miss out on roles and things that come out in the market. If you want your name to be known and your presence to be known for doing things that are pushing the company forward.
Yeah.
They can be in investor conversations. So it could be an investor you spoke to who was impressed about the way you presented, or it could be in an interview, or it could be in a networking event. I don't really do that many of those, but the idea is it's about leaving a lasting impression. And that can come from many different ways. And I think as you progress in your career, there are things that get you in the door. And then from there, it's from on you. Right, you've just got to get in the door. And if you can't deliver, then that's fine. But you've got to have the brand to push yourself through that. And I think across my peers and my buddies, they tease me like crazy for it. Right? Yeah. They tease me like, honestly, the minute an article comes out, one of my friends will message me and say, I disagree with these things and stop using these words. And that's fine. It's fine. Right? They're my friends and that's what they will do.
Yeah.
It's just being accepting with that and, just accepting that's part of it. And I'm trying to push myself forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. It is uncomfortable, and actually, when they see others doing it, there's almost a bit of, well, I wish I could do it, but actually, I feel a bit too I'm not going to go there.
I think it's so I have a couple of friends, or one friend in particular, who I call. He's one of the only people in the world that I call when I do something well. And it's this whole thing. If you watch like Trevor Noah, I had the whole idea of that. How many friends you have on your phone that you call if something's going well, and it's a much smaller list than you would call if something bad was happening because you have a much bigger list. So who do you call who says, "Wow, that's amazing"? Yeah, I'm like, you're doing awesome. Like, there's not many people you have, and I have a few around me where we challenge ourselves to do better and talk about things that we're doing in the market, and that's having that network around you who say, "That's good. I'm going to beat you in it," and then we have a bit of competition around it is important. And having a friend group around you who say, well, I'm making more money than you, or my job's better than yours, and we're challenging on how we're doing different things, but also respecting that we can see as people are progressing what they're doing. We share contacts, we share relationships, and those things that help is important because that's what keeps you level to where you are in your peers, because it's hard, right? You finish university, you finish school, finish PwC. Who are your peer group? You don't know who they are anymore. So having the people around you who can grow with you as we all develop and we're all similar ages and pushing our own careers is quite important. We don't speak every day, but I'll call him and tease him about his Vespa, right? I'll call him and tease him about the kids. Like, this is how our relationship works, and I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, super. From an industry perspective, so in fintech and payment space, what are there any trends that you're particularly interested in and tracking at the moment?
I think the AI and data one's a huge one. I think there is increasing knowledge of how useful it could be in your company. I think my example before around understanding how a company could invest in that going forward is important, because you see functions and businesses that invest a lot and have seen huge growth. We were at an event this week with one of our non-execs of our board telling me about how he saw an AI firm with 10 people who've seen huge revenue growth in 3 months and now worth millions. That does happen. So you take that natural curiosity into a business like ours, into a fintech dynamic where you have the smartest engineers, the smartest product people, and you have to break down the infosec and legal barriers to try and get us as a company being innovative in an AI and data space. We're processing large numbers of volumes of transactions. We see so much data that has to be useful in the market. I don't know how to make it useful. It's kind of not really my job to know how to. My job is to find people who can spend the time to make it useful for us.
On the flip side of that, what would you pick out as the key risks for the business over the next 18 months or for the sector?
I think it's what we are seeing in the market, in the funding landscape, is the firms who raised money in 21 would have raised money looking at a runway through to about 24, roughly 24, 23, 24. They would have, if they've missed revenue forecasts, they haven't really got product fit. You're finding companies that are not really companies, they are products, and realizing that the valuation they raised at 21 was high, can't raise money, running out of money, and start to come up for sale when they probably don't need to if they're structured the business in a different way. So the biggest risk is that you overextended yourself and now you overinvested in an R&D function that you can't maintain because you were never able to make it, a real company. It was one product and actually would probably be more effective as part of a collection of products in a bigger company. That could be a Series A and B going to a C and D going to a listed firm. But that's what you're seeing more and more in the market. And it's a consolidation whether you're looking at products or markets. So for me, I think that is giving us a lot of opportunity. After I did the interview, which was last September, I got loads of stuff across my desk, right? Immediately. That's what you want to see. You want to see deal flow. You want to see it. And actually, once you're in the market, you want to see what things we could do. It doesn't mean we'll do them. But I think even for me, as an interested person in the market, I like to know what's going on and what people are up for sale and why. And I actually have more of an interest in that. Or maybe we won't do it. It doesn't really matter. I still think it develops me understanding their story of why they're at that point. That's something that I can feed back into the CEO. But now he's more up to date with where the financial markets are. And I think a truly commercial CFO should see that as part of their job.
How are you seeing, we touched on AI in a few respects there, but again, flipping it back to your role and function, depending on what you read, finance function is going to look a hell of a lot different in 2035, maybe less.
Yeah.
Are you able to harness any AI within the finance function at the moment for efficiency and automation?
So I think we are trying. So what we did last year was I gave one of the, senior managers in our team objective to look at AI in finance. So look at the operational processes and understand if there's anything that we could do to improve AI, use AI to improve some processes. Still early stage, we've not been able to do it, but that meant that she spent time going to conferences, talking to MasterCard did a number of events on AI. So going to events and trying to understand how others are doing it. In the end, we didn't find a use case that was compelling enough at that point to invest in, but that wasn't really the point. The point was I've now hired people into our organization who are young, hungry, smart people who, when I say, do you want to learn about, reorganizing our function and making it more efficient with AI, they get excited and they see it as a benefit to their CV. to their reputation to understand how this works. And so I'm trying to get the central kind of controller group to realize that it brings them efficiency and makes them better and stronger in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So go and invest the time. We have 6 learning days as a company for each person. Not everyone has to do a CFA, right? Not a CFA is not for everyone. Go and use that time to go and attend conferences and do trainings on how we can make our processes better. It will help all of us.
Do you at all worry about the future of the accountant? I think that the recent statistics are, both in the UK and the US, less and less people entering the profession, lower intake, perceivably less fashionable versus going into other functions and tech, etc. Do you worry about the future pipeline of talent into accounting and finance?
I do. I think you see it in audit. So if you're thinking in the big way that audit firms were hiring, big 4 firms were hiring 1,000 graduates a year in the UK. Now, for I think probably the last 5 years, every audit partner has told me they're struggling for staff. Every single one, regardless of whether it's been at a small firm doing local financials to big 4, they've all said, we don't have the right staff all the time because people want to go and do something else rather than actually retain. And now you're going through a different org where they've got too many partners and reorganizing. So it's slightly different. But I think in our world, it is different. It's not as exciting. But I think what we are finding, though, is the stability of having a good name, doing the ACA. Now I'm a fellow. Those things are worth their weight in gold. It means that I'll always get a job somewhere, somehow. I may not pay as much as I want to, but I'm not going to be unemployed for long periods of time. So I think that maybe it's a cycle now that there's more opportunities and other things you can do as an influencer and other things like that. But you're always going to need an accountant. So the risk averse of us are always going to see this as an easy way to move forward.
Is there anything new, either professionally or personally, that's really energizing you at the moment?
Yes, I think there are. I think probably for the last few years in my role, by moving in from being a regional COO and CFO into really being the CFO, what gets me excited is the investor landscape. So it's not so much the board management, that is what it is, and reporting to them, but it's the feeling of being in Dragon's Den and pitching your business to a bunch of investors and doing that to sometimes 1, sometimes 3, and managing it as a sales funnel. So for me, that's a completely different skill outside of auditing cash, right? It's a completely different skill outside of doing forecasting. It's how are you actually able to build relationships with a number of different people and go out and whether that's build relationships that could get you an acquisition deal or fundraise or strategic investment. Those are completely different skills to what you would have had as a regional CEO or even lower down the chain. I'm more excited about doing that than anything else because those are things that will stay with me as I progress through the company, as the company grows and exits, as I take that into my next role. They're the relationships that, the ones that will stay with me for the next 10, 15 years. That's why on the non-executive role, they've got, someone like Rake, who's, ex-CEO, well paid. They're relationships that you'll have for a long time. So I enjoy the investor side of it, the tense of trying to get a deal done and the nervousness through that, because I think that helps you grow as an individual, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Super. Well, thank you, Benyam, for coming on today. Before we wrap up today, is there anything else really important within the space, either CFO, FinTech, etc., that's on top of your mind?
I think the market has moved so much that you're seeing a lot of restructuring. You see a lot of people go out on the market, and that's normal. And understanding that hiring people who've gone through a restructuring process doesn't mean they're bad, doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing, doesn't mean that they were the worst rated person. Sometimes that's part of the course. That's something that's used to happen in a company. And I think hiring people who have gone through the kind of loss of being in restructuring is important. And we've done that in our team, done in others' teams, and understanding that even if you are part of it, so even if you're the one giving the restructuring or receiving it doesn't really matter. Working with them as they go through their career is really important. Knowing those relationships, sharing those relationships that you have, even though it's not happened to you, is massively important to the person being restructured. And so, you know, we've gone through it as a company, and others have around you. And obviously, I've been around the industry to know a lot of people who have. It's just being that ear and understanding that it's difficult for that person at the time, but also sharing your relationships if you value that person, because it does help. So if somebody comes in with a referral into a recruiter, having worked with them or knowing them, it does add value to it.
Absolutely.
And so I spend some of my time helping the people around me who've gone through it to say I have a network of people. I do talk to a lot of people. I'm here to help you, and I'm here to share my relationships if I think it will help you. And so I do think that's a really important thing to do, especially as you progress in your career, because you can be seen as a leader and people look at you for different reasons, whether that's, you know, the diversity aspect of it, if it's the PwC got out into FinTech, is it the young dad, or not young, but, you know, so people can see you as a leader for a number of different things. But what I'm trying to do is make sure that I have a significant enough impact on people around me to push them forward, because that's what Paul did and others did around me, which got me to this stage. And I've still got a long way to go.
Fantastic. Benyam, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.